India's NSA Ajit Doval has said what many countries are too afraid to say out loud. At the first International Security Forum gathering in Moscow, India's National Security Advisor fired a direct warning on terrorism, the Iran war, Hormuz tensions and the complete failure of the global order to deal with modern threats. And between the lines, there was another clear message. India is done tolerating double standards on Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. This was not routine diplomacy, this was strategic signaling. Ajit Doval stood before security officials from multiple countries and delivered a message that sounded less like diplomacy and more like an indictment of the global system. He said, terrorism cannot be treated selectively. No good terrorist, no bad terrorist, no strategic assets, no geopolitical convenience. India has repeated this argument for decades. But this time the timing mattered because Doval spoke just weeks after renewed tensions with Pakistan and amid growing instability across West Asia. Without naming Pakistan directly in every sentence, the target was obvious. Doval warned against countries using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. He said, nations sponsoring cross-border extremism eventually destabilize entire regions. India calls this the bleeding India by 1,000 cuts doctrine, a strategy Pakistan's deep state has used for decades through proxy terror groups. And Doval made it clear, India will not accept lectures from countries that protect or justify extremists while demanding global cooperation elsewhere. But Doval's criticism went beyond Pakistan. He also questioned whether existing global institutions are even capable of handling modern security crises anymore. This was one of the sharpest parts of his speech. Because the United Nations Security Council remains paralyzed on almost every major conflict today. Ukraine, Gaza, Red Sea attacks, Iran-Israel escalation, cross-border terrorism. The UNSC debates, vetoes happen, statements get issued, but enforcement remains weak. Doval openly pushed for urgent reforms in global institutions, especially the Security Council structure, which still reflects the power balance of 1945, not 2026. India has argued for years that the UNSC has become outdated and unrepresentative. Doval essentially said the same thing in Moscow, that the world cannot fight modern threats using frozen Cold War structures. And there was another message hidden inside that argument. India wants a larger global security role, not as a bystander, but as a rule shaper. Then came the part that immediately grabbed strategic attention, the Strait of Hormuz. Doval warned that any prolonged disruption in Hormuz or the Red Sea could trigger massive global economic consequences. That warning matters because roughly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through Hormuz. For India, this is not abstract geopolitics, it is a direct economic survival. India imports the majority of its crude oil. A major regional war involving Iran could send energy prices exploding overnight. Insurance premiums would spike, shipping costs would rise, supply chains would choke, inflation would surge globally, and India would face immediate pressure on fuel prices, trade and economic growth. The Iran factor also hung heavily over the forum. Russia, Iran, China and several Asian countries all closely watched the growing tensions involving Tehran. India has historically maintained balanced ties with Iran, Israel and Gulf countries simultaneously. That balancing act becomes harder if the region slides toward open war. Doval's remarks reflected this concern because India faces a difficult equation. It has deep strategic ties with Israel, massive energy dependence on the Gulf, and important connectivity interests linked to Iran, especially the Chabahar port project. Any wider conflict threatens all three simultaneously. That is why India's security establishment increasingly views West Asian instability not just as a foreign policy issue, but as a direct national security threat. The location of the speech also mattered: Moscow. At a time when Russia faces Western sanctions, India's NSA appearing prominently at a Russian-led security forum carried geopolitical symbolism. India is carefully preserving its strategic autonomy. Delhi refuses to fully align with any single bloc. It works with the United States in the Indo-Pacific, buys weapons from Russia, engages Iran, coordinates with Europe, maintains ties with Israel and the Gulf simultaneously. Doval's appearance reinforced that India still intends to operate independently in a fragmented world order. Ultimately, Ajit Doval's speech was not only about Pakistan, Iran or the United Nations. It was about collapse of certainty in the global order. Wars are spreading, trade routes are vulnerable, proxy groups are growing stronger, technology is changing warfare faster than diplomacy can react, and major powers increasingly distrust the institutions meant to manage all this chaos. In that environment, India is positioning itself differently, more assertive, more security focused, and far more willing to publicly challenge the global double standards it believes have protected terrorism and weakened international order for decades. Moscow simply became the stage where India decided to say it loudly.
If they had a nuclear weapon,
The old rules are breaking. Alliances are shifting.
Apologize again to the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Wars are redrawing maps. Oil routes can shake economies overnight. One election in America can impact markets in Mumbai.
no tax on tips.
One move by China can alter the balance in Asia. One conflict in West Asia can hit every Indian household. This is no longer a distant story. This is our story. Your story. Because for the first time in decades, India is not watching from the sidelines. India is rising. India is negotiating. India is balancing rivals. India is building military strength. India is shaping trade routes. India is becoming central to the new global order. And yet, most global news is still told through someone else's lens. Washington's lens, Beijing's lens, London's lens. But where is India's lens? Where is the platform that explains the world from our perspective? Welcome to India's Axis, a new destination for geopolitics, strategy and power seen through India's eyes. From Neighborhood Watch to the biggest global stories that matter to you. Why tensions in the Taiwan Strait matter to India. How one move by China can affect India's security. What turmoil in Pakistan means for regional stability. How Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan shape India's neighborhood. Why oil choke points can hit your wallet. How wars abroad can reshape India's security. This is not noise. This is not shouting. This is not recycled headlines. This is sharp, intelligent storytelling. Daily explainers, war room analysis, strategic conversations. Because news is everywhere, but perspective is rare, and in the age of confusion, clarity is power. Axis is for the audience that wants more than headlines. The axis of global power is shifting. India is at the center of that shift. It's time the world was explained accordingly. To understand the world through India's strategic lens. Subscribe now.